Hello, horror fans, and welcome back to the Script to Screen podcast, where we delve into the spine tingling world of horror cinema. Each week, we look at the scariest scenes, unmask the deeper meanings behind your favourite horror films, and explore the psychology of fear that keeps us coming back for more.
From script analysis to scene breakdowns, we'll be dissecting your favourite horror movies to see just what makes them tick. So whether you're a seasoned horror aficionado or just starting to explore the genre, join us as we unravel the spine-tingling stories that haunt the silver screen.
I'm Will.
And I'm Lee.
And it's good to be back, Lee. How have you been?
Yeah, not bad, my friend, not bad. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Yeah, struggling on, as they say, struggling on. Have you been watching anything this week? Have you watched anything good?
Oh, man, definitely. I binged season 2 of the fantastic TV show From,
Yeah.
which I highly recommend to anyone that likes horror or enjoyed Lost before it got a bit shit. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. I'm so invested in this show. It's been a long time since TV has grabbed me like this.
Brilliant. And how many seasons does that run? I don't even know how many.
I'm currently on season 3, and it's been renewed for at least a 4th season.
Right.
So things are sort of going well. 5 seasons
Ongoing.
I think tends to be the normality for TV shows nowadays. So
Yeah,
I'm
fantastic.
hoping it runs for 5. But to be honest, I think the format of the show is just so clever and so well imagined that
Mhm.
it's very you could potentially run it for forever because the formula is just so interesting,
Right.
and it's always possible to add new dynamics into the mix.
Yeah.
I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil the show, but yeah,
No,
I
no.
highly recommend it. How about you? You haven't watched anything good?
Well, this week I watched Zone of Interest. Have you ever seen Zone of Interest?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's a German film, but it's made by an English filmmaker. But it's basically about I think it's Rudolf Hoss, possibly. But he is the sort of basically the commander of the Auschwitz concentration camp, and he's living essentially this kind of idyllic life uh, right next to Auschwitz. And you're focused on this kind of really banal kind of family life that's taking place in this kind of walled off kind of house with this beautiful garden and all this stuff. The family are playing and all this sort of stuff. Beautiful kind of location, except for Auschwitz is right next door, and he goes off to work every day and comes back. And all you're really seeing is sort of the buildings in the background, and you're seeing occasionally like wafts of smoke coming up in the background from the chimneys, or you're seeing like smoke from trains arriving, like bringing
Yeah,
more. And you've got this kind of soundscape, which is just camp life going on in the background, like
yeah,
screams, arguments, shouts, kind of
yeah.
gunshots. It is crazy. And you're just watching and it's filmed in such a strange kind of way that
Hmm.
the whole thing just creates this utterly like mesmerizing viewing experience. And they're just going about their life. Like
Yeah.
it's, sort of they're aware what's going on, but the juxtaposition of those two things is really crazy. I mean, it's
Nothing
so well
scarier
done.
than real life, is there? Jesus.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's super sinister. Very scary indeed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was great. I mean, really worth a
Yeah,
watch.
yeah. It sounds like
I
a
think it's
pretty
Jonathan
fun.
Glazer, I think, is the filmmaker who made it,
Gotcha.
but
Gotcha.
wrote and directed it as well, I think. Yeah. So,
Oh, wow. Okay. So what's up for dissection this week?
Welly. Funny I say it. This week we're going to be looking at the modern masterpiece that is Sinister.
Film directed by Scott Derrickson and co-written along with C. Robert Cargill. Sinister was released on October 2012, and it went on to rake in almost $83 million at the worldwide box office on only a $3 million budget.
Now that is, dude, that's seriously impressive money, isn't it?
I know, right? Yeah, almost on Paranormal Activity, Blair Witch kind of style level there. It's getting really good. Yeah, so we'll be comparing the film with a copy of the script dated 20th of April 2011, written by Derrickson and Cargill, and weighing in at 104 pages. Interestingly, the script is titled Found Footage.
Now I've heard you mention C.R. Cargill before, Lee.
I'm sure you have. Yeah, absolutely. I will confess I'm a huge fan of Cargill's work and style, and hopefully after we're done here, you will be too. Interestingly, the idea for Sinister came to him in a nightmare after watching The Ring, and he tweaked it over time, evolved it until it became the pitch for the movie Sinister.
So it's literal nightmare fuel is what's going on here, Liz. Is that what we're saying? So yeah, I know you've also mentioned something about this being scientifically the scariest movie ever made.
Yes, I definitely sort of like dropped that in a few times. Okay, so back in 2020, Forbes magazine conducted the Science of Scare project, where they monitored the heart rate of viewers while they watched a number of horror films. And out of 35 films, this movie had the highest average heart rate at 86, spiking at 131 beats per minute. Thus, it is often deemed as being scientifically the scariest movie ever made, and fairly
Well,
so, I think.
let's see if your praise is warranted, Lee, as we take a deep dive into Sinister. A controversial true crime writer finds a box of Super 8 movies in his new home, revealing that the murder case he is currently researching could be the work of an unknown serial killer whose legacy dates back to the 1960s. We open on grainy Super 8 footage of a family of four standing beneath a large tree, four nooses bound tightly to their necks. A branch is cut, pulling the ropes tight, and the four victims are hoisted slowly to their deaths. Oh, what an opening!
I know what a great opening image that is, you know, and it's not just a random cold open either. It plays a key part in the film too, and this pretty much plays out to the letter in the script. And this was the key image from Cargill's Nightmare, so it is written in meticulous detail.
And the sound design here is really on point too. Every sound, every piece of music just complements the film perfectly. So we're introduced to Ellison Oswalt, who's played by Ethan Hawke, his wife Tracy, and son Trevor, as the Oswalt family move into their new home. It's not long before the local sheriff arrives on the scene and asks to speak to Ellison. So that's an unusual name, Ellison.
Yeah, I believe it's a homage to the late writer Harlan Ellison, writer of "I Have No Mouth, but I Must Scream." Have you read that story?
No, Lee, no, I haven't read that one. My horror reading has been lacking a little bit of late, to be honest.
It is a deeply disturbing piece of fiction, that's for sure. It's quite an old story. It kind of involves like humanity's pretty much been wiped out. There's a handful of survivors left, and they're kind of kept by this super intelligent computer, and it can sort of warp reality, and it just tortures them in all these different ways that it can
Oh my goodness.
imagine. And there is one point where it just kind of removes this guy's mouth so he can't scream, and
Wow.
it's a very disturbing story. It was really good though. I definitely recommend checking it out. I think it's influenced a lot of horror writers over the years.
Yeah, sounds pretty spooky. So we're briefly introduced to Deputy So and So, played by James Ransone, who would go on to star in Sinister 2 and It Chapter 2, amongst other things.
Yeah, it's a really nice little character moment when he's introduced as well. He's clearly a big fan of Ellison, and he goes on to provide us with the film's few kind of lighter, more humorous moments.
So here the sheriff is quite dismissive of Tracy and asks for her husband.
Yeah, it's because he knows about Ellison, his reputation, which we'll learn is why he wants to talk to him directly. But I think the only reason that Tracy doesn't get too pissed off here is because she's clearly been through this before. She, it's old hat. She knows the routine.
Yeah. And we're then introduced to Ellison's somewhat creepy daughter, Ashley, who has already started painting her bedroom walls. Definitely a bad sign, Lee. And she's not happy about moving house.
Yeah, she is a little bit creepy, isn't she, for sure? But I do love the fact that the family just let her paint on the walls in her bedroom. Like just this one little thing, I think tells us a lot about Ashley and her parents and their just family dynamic in general.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd let any kids of my pet. Would you let your kids paint on the walls?
Well, funny enough, we let them paint a massive Shrek 2 mural on the kitchen wall when we were redecorating once. This entire wall was just like Shrek and Donkey and like baby donkey dragons, and we loved it
Amazing.
so much we kept it up for about a year before we finally painted over it.
Oh, nice. Was it good?
Oh God, no, it was terrible, but it still makes me chuckle when I think back to it. I got pictures of it somewhere.
Oh man. Okay, so back to the movie, and we get an absolutely fantastic dialogue exchange between Ellison and the sheriff. And it's made quite clear in the script that the sheriff won't set foot on the Oswald's lawn. It's a cool detail. You may not notice this on first viewing, but it's a really cool detail.
So good, this dialogue between the two, isn't it? I mean, you read a lot in screenwriting books about how dialogue should be like a battle of wills between two people that want something, you know.
Absolutely, like a struggle for dominance.
Exactly, exactly. And that's what's happening here. Like the two men feel each other out with some false pleasantries and then engage in a verbal battle for the upper hand. You know, both want the other to leave. You can tell as a writer, Ellison is used to having the verbal edge. The sheriff throws out some real good zingers here. I think my favorite is like, oh, this is just another waste of time, just like your last two books.
It's totally brutal, isn't it? Uh, oh man, the sheriff departs, but not before indicating his displeasure at the Oswald's new accommodation, and this does actually unsettle Ellison, who sheepishly heads back to his wife. She's got wind of that something is off, and is worried that they've moved in a few doors down from a crime scene again. Ellison promises that's absolutely not the case, and heads inside to look out the back window where we see, if you haven't already guessed, the tree from the cold open.
Oh, Ellison, you sneaky bastard.
Oh,
Also, why has nobody cut that branch down? It's literally hanging on for dear life.
I know,
And
right?
also, in case you're interested, no, that's a fake tree.
Yeah, I guess it has to be clearly obvious that this is the same tree from the opening, so probably leaving the branch is the way
Yeah,
to do that.
yeah, good point, I guess. So all largely is written so far, although interestingly in the script, we do get some extra clarification in the form of the underlined line. That's a tongue twister. Ellison has moved into the house where it happened.
Interesting use of the underline there. So we head up into the creepy attic. Of course we do, where Ellison is startled by a scorpion and dumps a heavy box on it, cracking some floorboards in the process.
Yeah, there's a couple of nice bits of foreshadowing here.
Yeah, I get the floorboards part, but the scorpion?
Patience, my young Padawan, all will be revealed.
Okay. Patience is not one of my virtues, I'm afraid, Lee. So Ellison then discovers a box of Super 8 movies and a projector, which he quickly stashes in his office. We then get a nice family dinner scene where we learn that the Oswalds are in something of a financial pickle and that their old house hasn't been sold yet.
Yeah, that's going to come in extremely important later.
Yeah, definitely. And we get another nice scene with Ellison and Tracy where it's made clear that the family is teetering on the Brinkley, and this is his last chance, and he really knows it.
Yeah, besides a few minor dialogue changes, this plays out exactly like in the script.
So Ellison gets to work setting up his office. There's a ton of nice visual cues here as he pins up crime scene photos and writes notes. He is taken aback when viewing the crime scene photo of the empty attic. Someone has clearly left the box of Super 8 film there in the time since.
Ah, yes. Yeah, this is underlined for clarity in the script, just to hammer the point across.
So it's home movie time, and Ellison fires up the Super 8 to watch a grainy home movie of a family enjoying time in the backyard, his new backyard. Suddenly it cuts to the film we saw in the opening. And after watching the film, Ellison pours himself a bracing glass of whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, the only difference in the script here is that he has to locate the whiskey and the glasses in some boxes. It's a pointless scene, so it's no wonder it was cut.
Yeah, I think fairly sort of needless stuff there. So Ellison watches the film again, writing notes as he goes, such as who made the film and where is Stephanie?
Yeah, if by any chance the audience wasn't wondering the same thing, these questions have now been actively planted in their mind.
Ellison heads into the backyard to check out the tree, and it's creepy as hell. Back in the house, he hears something moving in the dark. A nice little tension build here, but it's just Ashley who can't find the bathroom.
Yeah, there's a great little touch in here that's not in the script, where after using the bathroom, Ashley heads off in the wrong direction, and her dad just kind of turns her around and escorts her back to bed. I think that's such a lovely little, just a great little character moment there. I think it's
Yeah,
brilliant.
lovely little beat, isn't it? So back in his office, Ellison watches the second Super 8, which is entitled Barbecue 79. We watch a family in the 70s style clothing fishing at a lake. It's filmed in a very voyeuristic style, like the first film. We then cut to the family tied up inside a car, wrapped in chains inside a garage. The car is soaked in gasoline, and my godly is set ablaze. There is what looks to be a weird symbol painted on the car.
Yeah, in the script, the family is at a beach, but I'm guessing the voyeuristic camera work would be harder to pull off in an open area like a beach. So it was switched to a lake, so the cameraman could kind of hide Jason Voorhees style in the trees and the shrubs.
Yeah, yeah, that would make sense. But I mean, there is also something kind of inherently creepier to me about the woods in some way, you know? Anyway, so back to the film, and it seems Ellison has seen enough, and I can't blame him. He calls the police, but hangs up the call after seeing copies of his one-hit wonder, Kentucky Blood, piled up on the bookshelf.
This is his point of no return. I think if he'd contacted the cops, they'd have taken the film, and that would have been it. Maybe.
Yeah, he just, unfortunately he just really needs that hit book doesn't he, at this point, you know. It's a big kind of character flaw, his narcissism, and I feel that by the time he gets past it, if he gets past it, it's going to be too late.
Also, the cops would have totally traced that call, right?
Maybe they don't do that in America.
No,
So it's
true.
time for the next Super 8 labeled Pool Party. But before we can start, there's a noise from somewhere in the house. Ellison assumes it's Ashley, but she's still in bed. Sounds lead to a large box from which emerges Trevor, half naked and screaming his lungs.
If one of my kids had pulled shit like this, I'd have noped their ass straight down to the adoption center post haste. Yeah, in the script, Ellison starts watching the third Super 8 before being interrupted, and he catches one of his neighbors watching the commotion from a window.
Uh, There's also a great moment here where Ellison almost confesses to Tracy about the house. It's on the tip of her tongue, but he just can't do it. So he's in too deep now. The following morning, the family joke off the last night's events over breakfast before Ellison heads back into his office to watch the pool party.
Yeah, in the script, we are introduced to the nosy neighbor Fran, who doesn't appear in the film at all. She agrees to answer Ellison's questions, but says that he may not like her answers.
Mm. So back in his office, Ellison watches the third film. A family frolicking by the pool quickly turns into a scene of horror. Tied to sun loungers, they are dragged underwater one at a time. To make matters worse, someone or something is standing beneath the water and it looks up into the camera.
Oh, what a scene! What a scene! I mean, things are slightly different in the script. The family are tied to chairs, weighted with cinder blocks, and we see Mr. Boogie, aka Bargool, enter the pool from the other side. Things get a little unclear in the script, as it says Mr. Boogie has no mouth, but a few lines later it says he smiles up at the camera, which I'm not quite sure how that would work. But it does say how the water is distorting the image, so that could maybe be the reason for the kind of smile effect. It could be like a trick of the light or the water playing,
Yeah.
water movement, refraction, or something like that.
Well, either way, Ellison gets up for a closer look, but the Super 8 catches fire and the images melt away. After a quick Google search, Ellison resplices the film, but only a brief shot of Mr. Boogie remains. Right then, however, his investigation is interrupted by the sounds of a squabble as Tracy and the kids return home.
Yeah, at this point in the script, Ellison heads over to Fran's and they talk about the fate of the house's previous occupants. It's a pretty cool scene, I think. So here it is for your listening pleasure.
Interior, Fran's house, day. Ellison is seated at the kitchen table. Fran, dressed exactly as she was before, pours more coffee into his cup. Fran, they were such a nice couple. Real beer and barbecue, you know? Ellison, what do you mean? Fran, I mean, back then this neighborhood used to be pretty tight. Ice cream socials and block parties, you know what I mean? Ellison nods. Fran grabs a photo album off the counter and sets it down on the table in front of Ellison. As she continues talking, she flips through pages of photos taken at neighborhood gatherings, pointing to pics that include the Stevenson family members. Fran, they used to host more often than not. Beautiful kids, all of them. Even the weird one. Ellison, the weird one? Fran nods as if to say, you know the one I'm talking about. Ellison, you mean Stephanie? Fran nods. Beautiful girl, very sweet, but not like the rest of them. Ellison, how so? Fran, well, they were all very outgoing. The what you see is what you get type of family. The boy Brian, he was quite popular with all the local girls. The junior high girls used to ride their bikes back and forth in front of the house, hoping he would notice them. Caught him more than a couple of times knuckle deep in the backyard, if you know what I mean. Ellison chokes on his coffee. He wasn't prepared for Fran's crassness. Fran continued. And the youngest, Jenny, she was a darling. Cutest little Girl Scout you ever saw. Sang in the All Saints Episcopal Choir too. Couldn't sing a note, but she had so much heart that they gave her a solo every now and again because she was too precious not to. How old are yours, by the way? Ellison. My kids? Well, Trevor is 12 and Ashley's 7. Fran. And what does your wife do? Ellison, half joking. Stays out of my way, mostly. Fran. What is that supposed to mean? Ellison. We're both stay-at-home types. She runs the house while I write. Fran. You can't do both? Ellison. Me? No. Once I get writing, the rest of the world fades away, and there's only the mystery in the book I'm writing about it. Fran. That's got to be hard on her. Ellison. She does all right. She's tough. So this girl, Stephanie, you said she was different? Fran. Oh yeah, she was quiet, shy. No one really paid her any mind. She just sat out on a swing talking to herself, mostly. Ellison. What swing? Fran. She had an old tire swing out back. Ellison. Was the family acting strange before the murder? Did they mention anything peculiar? Fran. Nope. One day they were the perfect little family. The next, they were, well, they were gone. Ellison. So no enemies, no scandals? Fran. I don't think there was a person in town who had a bad word to say about one of them. And I've never known a man to be more in love with his wife than that man was with his. Ellison. That sounds too perfect. Fran. Yeah, well, that was the Stevensons for you. Ellison stands up. Ellison. Thank you for the coffee. If you think of anything out of the ordinary, will you let me know? Fran. Of course. Ellison. One more thing. The tire swing that Stephanie used to play on. Which part of the yard was that in? Fran gives Ellison a sad look. She flips a page in her album and stabs a finger down on a photo taken from her backyard. It shows a clear view of Ellison's backyard when it belonged to the Stevenson family. The tire swing hangs down from the same tree branch from which the Stevenson family was later hung. Why do you think Fran was cut from the film, Lee?
Pacing, I guess, maybe scene continuity. I mean, for the whole film, we're right there in the house with Ellison. And I think maybe taking him out of it kind of gives the impression that he has a way out. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can't have a monster in the house if you leave the house, right?
Yeah, very true. But after Fran's scene, we go back to the scene of Tracy and the kids squabbling, and then we are back in sync with the film.
So it seems Trevor has been drawing murder scenes on the classroom whiteboard.
Probably not the best way to initiate yourself into a new school, Trevor.
No, slightly peculiar behavior there from Trevor. He also alludes that he knows the secret about the house, but to Ellison's relief, poor Tracy is kept in the dark. We get another short scene between Ellison and Tracy before we get down to the nitty gritty of the next Super 8.
A cool little thing from the script is that when we first view each of these Super 8 films, we get a little short underlined title. For example, in this case, and the fourth Super 8 film begins.
Yeah, so do you think this is like a stylistic choice?
In this case, I think it's to show the gravitas of the Super 8 films. I mean, it's important, and from a horror fan's perspective, it's going to be something special. I think it's just a cool way to set you up for something. It's going to be disturbing. So just reading the title kind of triggers you a little bit and has you on edge. And as I said, it just kind of adds to the gravitas of how significant and important they are.
Yeah. So this time we watch actually through the killer's perspective as he creeps through a house at night, cutting the throats of its restrained occupants in their beds. Once again, we see that strange symbol painted on the wall. Interesting, we don't get any happy time like the other films. We just go straight to the murders. Also, happy to note the family dog is unharmed, Lee.
Yeah, that's because it's a Chihuahua. Even Mr. Boogie knows those things are pure evil. You don't mess with Chihuahuas. hell is ruled by freaking chihuahuas, I
Yeah,
reckon.
absolutely.
But there is a really interesting note in the script at this point, which reads, note, the violence from here on out is PG-13 suggestive, hinting at extreme violence, but never showing any of it. Hence why the slayings are reflected in Ellison's glasses rather than shown explicitly.
Yeah. So do you think they really wanted to sell this as a PG-13?
Well, the lower the rating, the larger the potential audience. But despite their efforts, this was deemed too scary for impressionable young teens.
Now, I like the fact that Ellison can't watch the boy's murder. It's the first time he's had to look away since he started down this path. Now, after composing himself, he returns to the footage through his laptop and prints out an image of the occult looking symbol. Then, using some of those investigative writer skills, he tracks down the details of the murder and the missing child that resulted from it.
That's pretty much word for word in the script. Although the murdered family does have an extra child in the script.
A creak. Is someone in the attic? The power goes out, and again, Ellison hears something moving in the attic. A phone torch in hand, he goes to investigate. He checks on the family, who are all fast asleep, and boom, jump scare. So did that jump scare get you, Lee?
The jump scares always get me.
Yeah, that one got me. So Ellison heads up into the attic. Bang! Another jump scare. And as if that wasn't creepy enough, a box lid starts moving all by itself. He flips the lid to find a snake, which quickly kind of slithers off.
I would have not let that snake off so lightly.
It could have been venomously.
I wasn't.
Hello? When did you become a snake expert?
Well, it's a famous thing, isn't it? Red on black, venom black, red on yellow, kill a fellow.
Okay. Well, it could have still bitten you though, dude.
I've been bitten by plenty of snakes before.
You've never been bitten by a snake in your life.
Anyhow, in case you didn't pick up on it, it's stated in the script that this is the lid from the box containing the Super 8 film Smurley.
Ooh. And there looks to be some old child's drawings on the inside. They're drawings depicting each of the murders. Oh my goodness. Ellison kindly reminds us of this by repeating each home movie title that corresponds to each image. I like this. It's a nice way to make sure that the audience is all caught up and on the same page. He records the drawings on his phone, each of which feature a mysterious onlooker called Mr. Boogie. Ellison heads towards the ladder when boom, he steps on the broken floorboards, set up, payoff Lee, set up, payoff, and is knocked unconscious.
Yeah, this is largely as written, except we have an additional drawing on the lid in the script depicting a family being buried next to a Christmas tree.
Yeesh. So back to the film, and Ellison's leg is tended to by an EMT while Deputy So and so looks on.
In the script, his arm is injured, but no other changes.
The deputy checks out the hole, and we get a nice little semi comedic moment between the two to help alleviate all the pent up tension the audience has endured up till now. Deputy, snakes don't have feet. Ellison, no, Deputy, they don't. Deputy, I'm guessing you've got squirrels. There's no way in or out up there, and when the power went out in the neighborhood, I reckon they got spooked by the sudden noise of everything shutting down at once. You know how they are. Ellison, not really. I'm not a squirrel guy. Deputy, oh. Ellison, I also killed a scorpion up there when we moved in. I should probably call an exterminator. Deputy, scorpions have feet, but we won't hear them like you would a squirrel. So ridiculous. Ellison recruits the deputy to do some investigating for him on the sly. After seeing the deputy out, Tracy apologizes for taking her anger out on him earlier.
And if she only knew, eh?
Oh man, if she only knew. So Ellison sits alone watching an old videotape of an interview he did when Kentucky Blood hit the #1 bestsellers list. One thing I noticed here, and it's present throughout the film, is that there's a peculiar reverence to these different film formats, from the Super 8 to videotape and cell phones, digital cameras. Each one is succinctly different visually, right?
I mean, that videotape is looking pretty worn, right?
It's obviously seen a lot of use, Lee.
Yeah, I had a friend who had a VHS copy of Basic Instinct that wore out like that.
that I can believe, Lee. More than you being a snake wrangler, anyway.
Who like legit used to keep snakes. Like when they shed their skins, I would toss them over the neighbor's garden. And she was convinced for years that one had escaped and was living under a fence somewhere. But anyway, back to the script. So in the script, this interview is a little bit more disparaging of the police force, which would better explain the sheriff's hostility at the beginning of the film.
Also, when he's asked the question, which is better, the fame or the justice, he's totally lying, right?
I think so, yeah. And if he wasn't lying then, he's definitely had a shift in priorities since.
Again, this beautifully illustrates the driving force behind all of his actions, his motivations, his flaws. It's all here. The next scene has Ellison scouring the Super 8 footage frame by frame until he locates an image of Mr. Boogie in each one.
Yeah, things are slowly starting to click into place now. And it's a cool feeling as we, the audience, are right there discovering this stuff with him. We're totally invested.
Yeah. So Ashley brings her dad some coffee, but Ellison quickly dismisses her when the deputy calls with some information. It turns out one of the murdered families used to live at the same address that the family that used to live in Ellison's once lived at.
Yeah, it sounds a bit confusing, but thankfully we have another underlined script note to clarify things for the reader. So the Stevensons' prior home was the same house where the Millers were murdered. Underlined.
As Ellison is learning this fact, the still image of Mr. Boogie on his laptop turns to look at him, Lee.
Yeah, if there was any doubt something supernatural was occurring, it is now perfectly clear.
Ah, what a great shot that is, though. It's so creepy.
Yeah, it is. Though I kind of wish it was a little bit more subtle. Like, did that thing just move? Did I just see that move? Kind of deal.
Ah.
In the script, it's written to be a very, very subtle movement.
Uh, so Ellison rewatches the footage of him falling through the attic and notices scores of tiny hands pulling him down. Now, this is understandably, this freaks him out. Later in bed, he's woken by the sound of the Super 8 playing. He investigates to find nobody's there, but he takes the picture of Mr. Boogie lurking in the backyard and compares it to the bushes outside. And God damn it, Lee, it's a perfect match. And when he lowers the photo, Mr. Boogie's right there.
Yeah, this is my favorite jump scare of all time. It's so beautifully set up. It doesn't feel cheap. It is just a work of art.
Oh, it is the Mona Lisa of jump scares.
It is. It is. I mean, this isn't even in the script. On the page, Ellison looks from the image to the window and sees what looks to be Mr. Boogie lurking. Still scary, but nowhere near as brilliant.
Ellison has had enough. He grabs a baseball bat and a flashlight and heads outside.
Baseball bat. This is America. Where's your gun, man?
After a quick hunt, he finds Trevor petrified in the bushes.
Okay, probably a good shout with the bat then. Although I swear, if he started screaming like he did before, I probably would have clocked him with the bat anyway.
Thankfully for Trevor, he stays silent, and Ellison carries him back to the house before handing him off to Tracy and heading back outside for his bat and flashlight. It is here that he's accosted by a massive dog who does not seem particularly friendly. From the dog's POV, we see a group of children silhouetted behind Ellison.
Yeah, it's such a creepy shot. We are fully into the supernatural aspect of the story now.
Tracy isn't happy. She begs Ellison to drop the book and leave, but he won't have it. Despite everything that's happened, he still wants another 15 minutes of fame.
Next up in the script, we watch the missing Super 8 film.
And the fifth Super 8 film begins. On screen, an open field on Christmas morning. A family plays in the snow. Each member of the family is bundled up in bright coloured snow gear. They throw snowballs at one another in an elaborate snowball fight behind snow forts. They build a snowman and finish it off by placing a carrot as a nose and 2 pieces of charcoal as eyes. One of them sleds down a hill while the rest of the family watches. The film flickers a bit and then cuts to a static shot of an open space. In the open space are 4 shallow graves dug in the snow. The film flickers and jump cuts again, only this time the 4 graves are filled with the unconscious bodies of the family. Stripped of their warm clothing, they're now wrapped up in all the right places with duct tape, unable to move. The camera angle changes to a close-up of the father's face. A snowball hits him in the cheek. He groggily awakens. Dad tries to scream, but cannot through the duct tape around his mouth. He writhes and contorts but cannot move. The camera angle changes again, this time to Mum. The same scenario repeats itself. Mum gets awoken by a shovel full of snow. She tries to scream and free herself, but she can't. The camera angle changes again, showing all 4 family members writhing in their shallow graves. None of them can work their way out of their graves. The shot lingers, almost painfully so, relishing in their futile attempts to escape. The camera angle changes again, this time looking over Dad as snow is shoveled in from out of frame. He winces at the cold, but the snow keeps coming. A shovelful covers his chest, and he tries to shake it off. Another shovelful comes in. He begins wriggling like a caterpillar, trying to shake the snow off him. Snow keeps coming. The camera angle changes again, this time looking over Mum as snow is shoveled on her as well. A shovelful of snow falls down on her, then another, and another. She's crying, begging through the tape for mercy. A time cut, and we see that a major snowstorm has descended upon the open space. Harsh wind blows thick snow everywhere, creating a near whiteout. The camera cuts to the family completely buried, with the snow packed down tightly, covering all but their faces. Then the camera moves over the frozen corpses of the 2 children and Mum, with Dad the only one still breathing. The camera is down, almost completely on the ground next to Dad's face. Patches of black indicate frostbite on his cheeks and nose. Tiny icicles hang off his ears. He finally succumbs and freezes to death. The footage rolls out. Ellison switches off the projector and the video camera. He lets out a deep sigh, and it comes out as a breath of steam, as if he were sitting in the cold. He sits back, looking at the air. He leans forward a bit, breathing deeply out, trying to repeat the visible breath. Nothing happens. He looks uneasy. Ellison turns around and plugs the video camera into the computer, queuing up the video. He begins to frame through the video, looking for clues. He stops the footage in one shot and notes the snowman in the background. There's a figure lurking behind it, barely visible. On the front of the snowman itself is the occult symbol, soaked into the snow with blood. Ellison enhances the video and presses print screen. Then he hears a knock at the door. Which brings us, I think, Lee, back in line with the script.
What a cool scene that was. I wish that was in the film.
Oh, that would have been amazing, wouldn't it? So Ellison answers the door to the deputy, who demonstrates here he's not just a simpering fanboy. He's recognized that the murders are connected, and an impressed Ellison lets him in on some of the creepier details of the case, including the mysterious symbols. The deputy recommends he contact a local professor who specializes in the occult.
Some of the dialogue has been trimmed down, but basically the scene plays out exactly the same on the page.
Next up, we are subjected to the final Super 8 film. Some more peeping Tom camera work watches a family through the windows of their home before starting up an old lawnmower and taking it for a spin around the garden into boom. Another beautifully crafted jump scare here.
Yeah, this film does jump scares like no other. I mean, it really does. Now, in the script, this scene doesn't occur until after Ellison speaks with Professor Jonas, and it plays out a little differently. We see the family tied up in advance before the mower is started, so we know what's coming in advance.
Yeah, interesting. So rather than going for the dread, they went for the jump scare.
I think it's about creating those holy shit moments that stay with you after the film is finished and the details start to fade. I mean, I still hear people talk about that lawnmower scene, so I think they clearly made the right choice there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've definitely heard you kind of berate jump scares so many times, and like here you're singing their praises.
Yeah, I know. But you know what? You're absolutely right. And I feel like I should clarify my position here somewhat. I dislike cheap jump scares where something just goes bang for the sake of making you jump, just to make a film scary by throwing in a loud noise. The jumps here are perfectly crafted to startle and disturb you. The only real cheap jump scare I feel is when Ellison investigates the loft earlier and something bangs. But they play off of that by throwing in a second cheap jump scare, like literally a moment later. So, in a way, even the cheap jump scares in this film have something original about them.
I think the other thing, well, just that I noticed as well, is that a lot of the jump scares are actually kind of plot centered. rather than, a bunch of birds bursting out of a bush. It's actually something to do with the plot. It's something to do
Yeah.
with kind of what's going on.
Or as Shane Black would say, the rocket cat being thrown through a window at
That's
you.
right. The squealing cat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so back to the film, and now Ellison speaks with Professor Jonas, and Professor Jonas is that
Kingpin.
yes, it's Vincent D'Onofrio, who is awesome. So I didn't actually realize he was in this.
Oh, that man should be in everything.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. Scheduling could be a problem, but in a perfect world. Anyhow, Professor Jonas gives us a much needed exposition dump where we learn about Boogle. Am I saying that rightly?
I think it's Bargool, but don't
Bargool,
quote me.
the eater of children, an ancient pagan deity who tricked the children into entering the spirit world and consumes their souls over many years.
Yeah, this plays out largely as written with just a few minor dialogue changes.
I think they reorganized these scenes as watching the final Super 8 is what gives Ellison the impetus to contact Jonas and helps move the script forward.
Yeah, I never really thought about that, but yeah, I think you're spot on there. It does keep the momentum of the film moving nicely.
So Ellison locks up his office and packs away the Super 8 before retiring to bed. He is woken in the night by the sound of the Super 8 running. Again, this Super 8 is running. He rushes to his office to find the Hanging Out film playing. He turns off the film and grabs his baseball bat, trusty baseball bat again.
Rusty baseball bat. All is written here. Once again, the script does give us a little insight into what Ellison is thinking. Just to catch the reader up, we have the line, "Someone has to be in the house. There is no other explanation."
As Ellison checks the house for intruders, he is eerily stalked by several ghostly children. I really love the way the kids move, and Derrickson is playing with frame rates. He's almost like, they're underwater and they make no sound, and it's just a really wonderfully crafted scene.
There's a few minor script differences, but it's just the places the ghosts appear, and it doesn't affect the story at all.
So Ellison checks on the kids. Trevor is asleep, and it appears Ashley is too, whereas in fact, she is staring terror stricken at one side of the ghost children and painting Bargool on her wall.
That is a really cool shot.
It plays on the old screenwriting trick, giving the audience more information than the protagonist to create tension. With the house secure, Ellison falls asleep on the couch where he remains until morning. When he wakes, everything in the house appears normal, so that's good. In the next scene, Ellison has a heart to heart of sorts with the deputy, which once more ensures the audience is up to speed and injects just a little more humor into the situation to offset some of the tension.
Yeah, this scene is largely as written. I love the way that although the deputy is set up to be this kind of goofy comic relief character, he's incredibly perceptive and immediately picks up on what's been going on. I think, like with a little bit more self confidence, he would have made a great detective himself.
I think so. It's a nice amount of depth given to what could have been just a cliche kind of side character, I think. So back to the script, and Tracy is pissed. Seems Ashley has been painting outside her bedroom, but things quickly turn sour for Ellison when his daughter drops him deep in the shit. She drew Stephanie in the hallways because she didn't want to be in her brother's old room. Who is Stephanie? The girl Daddy's writing his book about.
I love Ellison's face here. Ethan Hawke is he's one of the greatest actors of our generation. He just sells it so well here.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? So Tracy and Ellison have it out in a fantastic argument scene.
See, to me, this is such a typical guy versus gal argument. I mean, he's throwing logic bombs at her, while, which technically true is not what she wants to be hearing right now. It's kind of like, you told me we didn't move near a murder house. We didn't. So nobody was murdered here. No, they were murdered in the backyard. It's such a great scene. But it just always cracks me up a little bit because it's just so relatable in a way.
After a brief, somewhat reconciliatory scene between Ellison and Tracy, Ellison is once again awoken by the sound of the Super 8. He follows the noise to the attic where he finally sees the ghost children sitting campfire style and watching the Super 8. Things rapidly worsen as Bargle appears on the film and hits Ellison with a jump scare, sending him falling from the ladder, and followed shortly after by the Super 8 camera and films. So, was this a cheap jump scare, in your opinion, Lee?
Absolutely. But once again, they follow it up quickly with a second cheap jump scare. So I'm going to have to try this method out and see if I can get it to work for me. Incidentally, Bargool isn't in the script here. It's just the creepy kids present.
It's the last straw for Ellison. He takes the projector and the films out into the backyard and burns it all. He then tells Tracy to grab the kids and they are leaving. The Oswalds speed away, but their desperate escape is noticed by the sheriff, who is quick to pull them over. We get a really nice bookend to their original scene here. Ellison's complete lack of hostility and defensiveness quickly earns the sheriff's respect, and he lets Ellison go with a warning.
Yeah, pretty much word for word to the script. And I agree. It's a really, really nice little scene.
We're at the Oswald's original house now.
House. Dude, this is a freaking palace. I mean, there's Ellison moaning about how poor they are, and I would sell my left nut to live in a house like that.
You finished?
Sorry, rant over.
Besides, you'd have to find a buyer, and I'm not sure you'd have much luck with that. Everything seems hunky dory as the Oswalds unpack and settle back into their old home. Ellison ignores a call from the deputy. That night, Ellison receives an email from Professor Jonas containing some ancient images of Bargul. The two converse over Skype, and we learn a few final details about the demon. He lives in images, and those that view them can be possessed and even abducted into them, Lee.
It's all falling into place now. Did you see what the images were?
I was mainly listening to D'Onofrio, if I'm honest.
No, understandable. They show the images. Basically, they show Bargul in his different forms, which are checklist: a scorpion, a snake, and a dog.
So all the times we saw those animals,
It was Mr. Boogie himself.
it's so cool, isn't it? Ellison ignores another call from the deputy and deletes all of the Super 8 films from his laptop. He then takes some boxes upstairs to the attic, and lo and behold, the box of Super 8 movies is back. Only this time it has an envelope of extended cut endings.
So it was Zack Snyder all along.
It seems that way, doesn't it? Ellison heads back to his office and begins to splice the new endings into the old films.
There's a sweet little post-it note from Ashley, along with a mug of coffee here, because she learned how to make Daddy's special coffee. Remember?
Yeah, I recall that scene, but it didn't really go anywhere. But back to the movie, and Ellison finally answers the call from the deputy, and the final pieces fall into place, Lee. The pattern is that each family that was murdered moved out of one of the previous murder houses, just like Ellison has done now. Ellison sits down to watch the re edited footage and sees that in each case, the missing child was the one responsible for the murders. Oh, finally, he becomes woozy. And after finding a glowing green substance in his coffee cup, he passes out, Lee. And at this point, I got it. Ashley plus coffee.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, if you look back at some of the Super 8s, you can see the weird glowing liquid in various drink containers.
Brilliant.
Yeah, the script is pretty much the same, although we get an ending to the cut Snowman Super 8 of the missing child making snow angels between her frozen dead family, which is a lovely, lovely Christmas image for you.
Ellison Ellison passes out, and when he wakes, he is tied up on the floor with Tracy and Trevor. Ashley appears with an axe and tells them, "Don't worry, Daddy. I'll make you famous again." we see, and we see the aftermath of the slaughter. Ashley's bloody artwork all over the walls as she adds her own drawing to the lid of the Super 8 box before being taken into her Super 8 movie by Bargool. The final image lingers on the Super 8 box, now with a new movie included, The House Painting 11. And boom, one final jump scare, Lee.
This is such a cheap jump scare, but I actually love it because when I watched this film with my daughter, she literally screamed out loud in terror, like actually screamed. And I've never seen anyone react to a scare like that. So it has a special place in my heart, you know.
You are a sadist, dude.
I know, I know. So come on, man, hit me up with your thoughts. What did you think?
Well, honestly, I thought this was a fantastically crafted film and a really sort of fantastically crafted horror. I think it's really the kind of horror that I'm kind of starting to enjoy. So, as you know, like I'm not a huge horror fan, but but the ones I enjoy, I think they're not really about like blood and gore. It's about a really kind of well-crafted story, well-crafted scenes. There's virtually no kind of, horrific gore in this film. Most things are implied, or they're only shown for like the briefest of kind of seconds. And we talked about how the sort of jump scares are incorporated into some of those things, or they're shown through something else like rippling water or the reflections on Ellison's glasses. It also goes to show, the most effective horror films, I think, have characters that you believe in and are invested in some way. And the film has amazing performances all round, from a real moments of pathos with Ellison and Tracy. And I love how Ellison's character flaws are really like the reason for all the horror that follows. So yeah, dude, I thought it was really loads of fun, really good, and pretty scary, but I really, really enjoyed it, dude. Yeah, how about you?
So awesome. Did you watch it in the dark with the sound up?
I did.
Oh, well done. I'm proud of you, man.
Yes. Yep. Did it.
Awesome. Man, I love this film so much. I mean, I think I like it better every time I watch it just because I notice something new or a little piece of something I didn't register before just kind of clicks into place. And I think it's just kind of a perfect storm of writer, director, and star gelling together to make something so well. It just makes something that kind of transcends the genre into something this is truly special. I mean, I think Sinister is kind of a one in a generation kind of horror movie, and hopefully it endures long, long into the future and is one day spoken of in the same, the same reverence as Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Exorcist, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Because I think it deserves to be up there. I honestly do.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely, dude. So what's your scariest moment, Lee?
for me, it was the photo in the garden jump scare. I love that scene so much. I think it's just perfect, perfectly crafted, genius.
Yeah, for me it was the lawnmower, dude.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I
got
can
me.
totally
Got me
understand that.
good.
So, what was your standout moment from the film?
Well, I think for me, like this is again, like I'm banging on about craft, but this is so well crafted. I mean, it's all the kind of atmosphere, tension. It's quite kind of Hitchcocky in a way, but honestly, like I really like love the performances from Ethan Hawke and Juliette Rylance, and really all the cast. Like I think the just put in sort of amazing turns. And there's this kind of argument that we referenced in the bedroom, which not only sort of is wonderfully performed but really kind of expertly blocked. There's a real kind of shifting power dynamic thing that's happening there. And I think lastly, like Derrickson's direction. So he always seems to have the characters doing something. And we sort of, we reference this in Bill Lancaster's script from The Thing. And here I think we see the sort of directing kind of equivalent. They're always kind of in motion, doing something, moving, something in their hands. So I think that's really kind of great stuff to sort of watch and learn from. What
Yeah,
about you?
that's a really cool, really good point there, actually. What I love about this whole process here is the close relationship between Cargill and Derrickson. I mean, for writers like us, it's a dream come true. Like the amount of involvement and love for the script, the friendship, camaraderie, and respect between the two is just kind of fantastic. I mean, I think it's just a great partnership. And I think each allows the other to kind of flourish, and it just makes something amazing every time. I'm envious and respectful of the duo. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's great stuff, isn't it? So, Lee, what have you learnt from reading this script?
Well, besides the general care and detail in the script, I think the amount of callbacks and foreshadowing that pays off on rewatches. I definitely want to try out the double jump scare
Mm,
technique. See if I can get that to work. I also quite like the way the script underlines certain parts just to make sure that the reader is aware of like the importance and the gravitas of the situation. And I think it's just a case of like everything being done well and everything being done right. The
mm.
pacing, the structure, the dialogue, the characterization. I think everything is just spot on. I honestly can't fault it. Maybe I'm a little biased, but yeah, I just think it's a great script to learn from. It's a great script to read. Just A+.
Fantastic. Yeah, wonderful stuff. Okay, so well, that's about it for this week. So what's on the agenda for next time, Lee?
Next week, we're going to tone things down a little bit with the horror comedy Tremors, iconic classic that it is.
What a great film. Can't wait to watch that one again. So it's time for a little bit of self-promotion here. If you enjoyed the podcast, please hit like and subscribe, and obviously go and check out our socials as well.
Yep. We also have links to the scripts we've looked at in the show notes. And as always, just a reminder that the scripts we looked at today are copyrights to their respective owners, and we are looking at them and using them here purely for educational purposes.
So until next time, take care.
And keep on writing those scares, people.